Hi, I'm Ross from the Geo team, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a terrain from scratch using VBS Geo. This will involve creating a new battle space, importing geospatial data files, placing and editing roads, editing elevation, placing and editing models, editing surfaces, and finally porting geo projects between battle spaces. Let's get started. Here we are in the main menu of VBS4, and there are no battle spaces yet created, so I will start by making one. I'm going to use the search bar up here to search for a location where I would like to create my battle space, and that location is going to be Fort Carson in Colorado in the United States. I'll click on that and it will navigate my camera there, and at this point I can either right click on the globe to make a battle space or use this new battle space button and then click my battle space location. I'll get a default name, but I can of course name this however I like. I can also add tags and a description if I so choose. I'll go ahead and save the changes, and now I'm going to just right click here and choose to open in Geo. I could also interact with the menu item here to open this in the Geo mode. The interface loads and my camera is moved closer to the terrain where I chose to make this battle space. So you can see it's pretty bare here, and we will be changing all of that during this work session here in Geo. Let's get started by familiarizing ourselves with the user interface. So along the top you have the VBS4 toolbar. On the left there is a menu, and then in the middle you have tabs for switching to the various other editing modes. You can also change your camera between a classic WASD control common in VBS3 to a mouse-based orbital camera. You also have an online-offline indication, and then quick access to camera controls, starting a preview, changing settings, opening help, and viewing notifications. Moving down, you have the VBS Geo toolbar, which organizes all of the tools into various modes: elevation, model, road, surface. And once a mode is selected, the tools are revealed. And whatever tool is selected in the toolbar is going to influence the panels shown on the right side. So you can see as I change my tool, the panels over here are going to change. Quick note that all of these things, the panels and the toolbar itself, can be reorganized however you like. In the middle, you have the workspace where all of the editing is actually going to take place. As this is a what you see is what you get program, you'll be interacting directly with items here in the view panel. Finally, along the bottom, there is a status bar, which will, on the left side, give you helpful hints on how to use the tool that you have selected. And on the right side, will show you your UTM coordinate location for your cursor. That's all for the UI, and let's go ahead and get started with importing some geospatial data. In order to import geospatial data, I am going to go to my VBS4 toolbar, choose the menu, choose Import, and then Import Data. I will then select the type of data I want to import. Let's start with some elevation data, and then I'll navigate to the file that I would like to import. See the manual for details on the data that can be imported. I'll press OK. You see now the data has loaded in, and you can see quite a bit more relief in this location. Let's proceed by importing another type of data. I will once again choose to import data, and this time I am going to choose to import surface data. And let me navigate to my surface data file. I'll open that, and I'll choose OK to import. Now we see the surfaces have updated, and we will proceed with our final file, which is going to be building models. All right, and now the buildings have loaded in. So you can see that this is really the quickest way to start building up the base of your terrain area, because I haven't done any manual placement of anything. It's all just using some data that I already have. Pretty basic specifications you can find in the manual, and just importing it in, and all of a sudden things are starting to come to life. So now that we have this nice base to work with, what we want is some reference of this area that we can look at on the ground while we're modeling. And in order to do that, I'm going to return to my menu up here, and I'm going to open up this backdrop image window. And this will be available anytime you're running online. And I have already added a backdrop image of this area in a very similar fashion to the way you import data. So I'm just going to select it and choose to view it. And now you can see an actual photo image of this area where all of these buildings are, where all the various roads are going to be placed, different models that could be placed, vegetation, surface appearance, all sorts of things. So now we have a really good base to start modeling, and it's important to note that this image is only going to be here in Geo for modeling reference purposes. I could have imported it the same way I imported the elevation data and such, and then it would be sort of visible outside in simulation, in plan, in editor, and would be sort of permanently baked into my terrain. I don't want that. I just want this reference, so that's why I'm using this here as a backdrop image. The data that I've imported is going to be present and available in all Battlespaces I create in this area, and can be edited within each Battlespace separately. So the elevation, surface data, and building data that I've added is now a part of my base world. So with that, we are going to proceed with some editing, and we will start with roads. So here I am with my road creation mode selected and my road placement tool equipped. I simply need to select a road preset in the library that I would like to place. I'll do that by clicking, and you see the options modify to reflect the default options for that preset. Now, you recall the status bar is going to tell me how to use the tool, so it says select a starting point, and I will do that just by clicking, and I'll continue to click along to place this road over the road I see in the image. You'll see next to the cursor, it's telling me the distance of each of the segments I draw, as well as the heading that I'm drawing in. And I can click along and draw this road as long as I like. You'll notice it says space down here to toggle curve. If I do that, I get this circle to draw around. I can hold control and mouse wheel to change the radius of that circle and quickly draw some curves that way. I can spacebar again to just turn that off, and then move down here and maybe make another curve. Any point I can right click and select complete drawing, or I can press enter to complete the drawing. The road will remain selected, and I can go back in and modify the position of these vertices however I choose. I can click on one of these hollowed out points to add a new vertex. And when I'm happy with the line, I can press enter again or click away to deselect it. Now I can, I want to draw another road that connects to this road. I'll do that by hovering over the existing road. My vertex is going to turn orange, indicating it's snapping, and then I just click once again to begin drawing my road. And as I click along, I know that I can come back and make this road as detailed as I like. And I'll just go ahead and press enter there to complete. I want to quickly show you that there's also an edit tool that allows you to come back here and make modifications to your road, either the options or the placement of it. So I'll go ahead and make this a bit thicker I'll choose to automatically round corners where it makes sense, and I'll do the same for this. And you'll see that this, gets smoothed out a bit with the round corners option on. Other options, you can drag the entire road if you so choose as well, and all of these edit interactions can be undone with Control Z. I'm going to finish placing the rest of these roads, and then we'll come back and look at some of the other creation modes. So I have completed drawing all of my roads in this area that I'd like to place down at this time, and I'm ready to move on with editing some other types of data. And what I'm going to do first is do some elevation editing. So in order to do that, I'm going to select my elevation creation mode in the toolbar, and I'll select the brush tool for starters. So this is a freehand elevation editing tool where I'll be sort of clicking to apply some set parameters here to the terrain under the brush ring that you see on the screen. So I have various effects that I can use on the terrain. I can raise it, lower it, I can smooth out the difference in the terrain, or I could flatten the terrain. So I'll start just by increasing the elevation of these hills, I want to be a pretty subtle change, and I'll show you how to do something like that, working with this relief that was created by that imported data. So what I'm going to do is reduce the size, and the size indicates the radius of the green ring that you see. That's where the fullest offset will be applied, and offset is how high in this case, terrain will be raised when I apply the brush. Could be lowered as well. And then the transition is just going to control that blue ring around the green ring, and that is the area where the offset applied will transition back to the unedited existing terrain elevation. So once again, like I was getting at, I will decrease the size quite a bit and increase the transition because I just want to make these subtle changes. And maybe I might change this to 0.75 or something. So I'm clicking and dragging along this hill, and you'll see a very subtle raising of the hill. And I'll do the same here. And I could increase the offset and make my edits far quicker in their effectiveness, but I am really trying to retain the existing sort of elevation here, and I just want to increase this to give the units up here a better line of sight into my built-up area down there. So here I have my increased hills with the road cutting through, and then I might come back in here using my right click quick access, switching to lower. Instead, it's going to retain those parameters, but just lower instead of raise. So I'll make this a little bit more of a valley through here. And there you have it. We'll just do a little bit more here. All right, and that's the brush, and it's a creative process, so do with it what you like. And moving on, we'll go to the area tool here. I'm going to show my imagery again. So in terrain creation, we often like to flatten out large lots like this that we know we're going to be placing a lot of models on, and we just want them to sit on a plane nicely. So what I'm going to do is click to trace around this polygon, much like I did when I was drawing my roads earlier. And I will enter to complete it. I can adjust this as I like. And once again, this transition is controlling the blue ring you see, and that's how the edited elevation, where it will make its transition back to the existing elevation. I don't want to raise this area, I want to flatten it. So I'm going to choose flatten. And I have various automatic options for flattening that are going to choose elevations for me based on the elevations existing in the selected area. I could also select a custom elevation using this little eyedropper tool. I might click somewhere in it just to grab something that makes sense, and then I can apply that change. And you'll see here, now I have this nice flat plane. That's the area tool. I'll quickly mention you can also like move this around if you needed to make multiple flattened fields or something like that. Quick reuse. Lastly, let's make a berm around this area using the line tool. This is very similar to what you saw with roads. I am clicking around the area I see in the image, and I will modify some of these parameters to adjust the vector how I like it. And I'm going to raise this. Go ahead and turn my imagery back off so you can get a better look. Alright, so I'm going to be raising this a meter. I'll apply. And there you have it. Now I have this berm made. That is it for elevation editing. Next, we will do some model placement. So I will go ahead and switch to my model creation mode and turn back on my backdrop image. Alright, so you can see that there are these little extruded building models that came in from my imported building data, filling most of these buildings that are placed in the image. But what I want to do is remove some of these buildings and replace them with my own interval buildings from the VBS4 model library. In order to do that, I'm going to choose my eraser, and I'm going to get rid of some of these buildings with the eraser. You can see when I hover the eraser over the buildings, they get a red ring drawn around them, indicating they will be removed when the eraser is applied. You'll notice that these tree models do not receive that same ring, so they would not be removed. And that's because these tree models are actually associated with the surface that is applied on the terrain, and I will discuss that later in the video. But let's get on with these models, and I will click to apply the eraser, and away go the models. Get rid of a few more. There you have it. And now we're ready to start placing our own content. So I'll switch to this point model tool, and on the right my tool options open, and so does the model library. And the model library is full of thousands of models that you can use to populate your terrain area. Of course, it's hard to sift through all of these models, so we provide some categories that you can use to filter the library. I'll filter down to buildings here and then type a keyword to further filter, and I'll choose one of these buildings. Once I click the building in the library, it'll be attached to my cursor, and now I am ready to place it on the terrain. I want to orient this building to the road before placement, and I can see here in the status bar it tells me if I hold Alt and move my mouse, I will rotate the model. So I'll go ahead and do that. And it also is telling me if I hold Control and Alt and move my mouse, I can scale this model. So I might do some of that as well. Lastly, you'll see there's actually an option up here that says Flatten Terrain. And that's going to automatically flatten the terrain 1.5 meter radius around this model after I place it. So I'll go ahead and click to place the model. You'll see the terrain has automatically flattened around it. And now I can go on my way placing more of this type of building model in my terrain wherever I might like it. I could also quickly switch to some other building and continue placing with the same sort of options I had set up here. You'll notice a couple other options here, randomization for scale and azimuth. And this is specifically nice for placing any sort of scenery object like rocks or trees or whatever you might want to place with nice fine detail, but also with some randomization. So I can just click and see that these models are randomizing as I draw around this rock barrier. There's also, if I'd like to be a little quicker, a little less precise with drawing this sort of thing, I might choose my model line tool. And a different library is now going to be revealed, one that configures all of those singular models into a rule set that can place the models along a line that I draw. So you see here that there is this rock barrier, and I can select it, and now I'm placing these rocks by drawing a line and not by placing points. And likewise, I will edit this object in a similar fashion once it's placed, using the line and not the individual points. We also have other types of line models, of course. One very popular one is the various fence models. I might draw a fence around this lot over here. Press enter to finish. You can see that the fence is nicely skewed to the slope. There's no stair stepping going on. And I can come back after this is drawn and readjust it, adjust the vertices, etc. Might go over here and quickly add one more quick fence to this lot that I flattened earlier in the tutorial. And there you have it. Now each of these tools, the point and line tool, have their own edit tools here. I can select this edit tool, and now I can go back and select my various model lines and make adjustments to them however I like. Similarly, with the point model tool, I can switch to the edit subtool, choose these buildings. I can copy and paste them around, rotate them just as I did when placing. I have these very fine property controls for getting exact placement if I so choose. I have a path to this actual model in the installation. I can also take two models, and you'll see down here it says Control+G to group, so now I can make a model group. I can move these around together. I can copy and paste them around. So this is a really quick way to populate your terrains once you have the various models that you'd like to use picked out. Lastly, there are some gizmos for additional control over these models in translation and scaling and rotation. So you can see I have various options for moving this along different planes. I can also choose my rotation gizmo and have a nicer visual representation of this model as I rotate it. And finally, there is a scaling gizmo, and I can scale this model in various different directions, however I choose. Once again, all of this can be quickly undone with Control-Z. That's it for model placement. I'm going to continue filling in this area, and I'll come back and show you how to work with surfaces. Now you can see I have finished adding all of the models that I would like in this terrain, and I'm ready to start working on my surfaces. So surfaces are what's controlling how the ground appears across my terrain and throughout VBS4. If I get a little closer to the ground, I can see that there are little grass models being placed and a grassy looking texture on the ground over here. And if I look next to this road here, I can see that in this imported surface data there is sort of this barren texture here next to the grass, and this is all being determined by the surfaces. So surfaces occur everywhere, and you can edit them pretty much just how you edit elevation. So if I select my surface creation mode, I see a very similar set of tools here to that was in the elevation creation mode, starting with the freehand brush tool. So with this tool, I can paint a surface definition across the terrain freely. Over here, I see in the options, I can either paint a single surface that I select and set some sort of strength That's going to determine how much it is applied over top of the existing surface. I could also choose this multiple surfaces option where I can select two surfaces, blend them together however I choose, and then paint over the terrain, essentially overriding the surface that is already existing there. So when I get started on my surface work, I like to take a look at my image and see just exactly what sort of appearance I'm going for. So I'll turn that on. And I can see that this area is mostly sort of this scrubby, partially barren, partially a bit green kind of surface everywhere. There are some greener areas probably where water is collecting and there's a little bit more growing there. We also have these lots that are barren within them here and on the other side. Yeah, so we can go ahead and get started with our edits. I'm going to first work on making this sort of scrubby area look a little bit closer to this in my geotypical surfaces. So let's turn this image back off. You can see that the surfaces are rather green here, so that's what I'm aiming to change. So just like with the elevation brush, the size is controlling the size of the green ring of my brush. That is what determines where the full effect of the surface I have chosen will be applied, and then the outer ring, or the blue ring, is the transitional phase where the surface will transition from the full application back to the existing surface area. So similarly to the freehand elevation, I'm going to make a pretty small size and a pretty large transition area here. So now all I got to do is choose the surfaces I want to put down. I want to do a mixture of this grassy surface and this sort of barren surface we were looking at before. So in order to do that, I'm going to use my select surface eyedropper, and I'll click on the terrain to grab the surface. And I can see that if I click there, it's grassland, and if I click on one of these barren spots, it's giving me barren area. So what I can do is look down here and find my grassland surface in the drop down, set a mixture of about 50-50, leaning on more of the barren side, and now I'm going to make just sort of broad stroke changes here. And you can see right away that my surfaces are becoming more scrubby, less green, and that's exactly what I want. These large surface applications can stutter a bit, but it's just what happens when you're editing a lot of data at one time. So here we go. That was pretty quick to get my area looking a little more scrubby. And now I'm going to move on to my area tool, and I'm going to make sure these lots are nice and cleared out. So I will trace around my lot here with my area. I'll press enter to complete, just like the other area tool shown earlier, and I will change this mixture over to be all barren area, and when I apply it, I'll see that all of the green is now removed here. I'm going to fly over to this other lot and do the same. I'll right click, choose to redraw, and then I will encompass this area, and I'll right click and once again apply that barren area I have selected there. Lastly, for some of these finer details, I'm going to turn back on my image, and I'll choose to redraw, and I want to add in this little ditch area that's a little greener. Adding some details like this just really improves the realistic quality of the terrain. So I think it's worth adding some details. And surfaces are certainly something you can get super involved with editing if you so choose, or if it's not as important to your training, then you don't have to do any of it. So here we have this area I've drawn that's quite complex. I am going to change my mixture over to all grass here and apply that. I'll show you what it looks like after I make this final edit. Over here with my line tool, so I just want to get this old road that's no longer being used placed in here with a line. I will turn down the transition here a bit and switch this back over to barren area. I will apply, and I'll redraw once more and also get this bit of road here and apply again. So now when I turn my image back off, we can see that my old road shadow has been added here, and I have my little green spots. My lots are cleared out, everything's looking a bit scrubbier, so we're good to go here. Lastly, I just want to have a short talk about surfaces and how they work across VBS4. So you may have noticed here there is this natural bin of surfaces below: bare earth, barren area, closed shrublands, etc. These natural surfaces are going to appear in your surface selection here. No matter where you create a battle space in VBS4, you will have the same surfaces. However, depending on the location on the globe that you are editing in, the surface might change its appearance a bit. So an evergreen needle-leaf forest here in Colorado is going to differ from an evergreen needle-leaf forest in the UK, for instance, and so on. So keep that in mind when doing your editing. And also, I wanted to note that these forest surfaces specifically are also usually going to have their own biome objects associated with them, like these trees you see in the background. So let me go ahead and switch back over to my brush and show you what this looks like in editing. So let me go ahead and make this a bit smaller, make some adjustments to my brush here. And what I'll do is get one of these surfaces over here, evergreen needle-leaf forest, and I'm going to just paint, and you will see that once I make my stroke, the trees are also going to be added in here along with the surface adjustments that are made on the ground. So just some quick notes about the models that are associated with the surfaces. Earlier I showed you how there's some grass models with the one surface as well. You can crack open the manual and get a better idea of what to expect with what surface. Lastly, since I mentioned the natural surfaces, I also want to mention that there are what we call urban surfaces. If I draw a quick plot here, I can switch back over to my single surface selection, choose an urban surface. I'll just choose some gravel, and I can apply that here. And these surfaces are not going to vary across the globe. They're always going to look the same. And with that, our area is completed. And like I said, you can keep going into as much complexity as you so choose. I could go back again and do more road editing. I could go back and do some more model placement. This is not a linear process. You can use any of the tools however you like at any time. I just wanted to give you a good idea of how I go about my terrain creation process. Last but not least, I will save this. And now I'm going to close out of Prepare. And now what I want to do is create a second battle space in the same area and port the changes I made manually in the first battle space into it. So I'll make a new battle space. I'll call it Fort Carson, Colorado 2. I'll select it over here and open it up in Geo. Now you can see that the building data and elevation data and surface data that I imported in the previous Battlespace is present, but none of my manual edits are. So to get those imported, I go here to my main menu and choose the Import Geo Project option. It's going to show me a list of projects I have and the distance from where my current Battlespace is of each. So I'm going to select one of those and choose to import. And now you see the data that I manually created in my other project has been imported into this new project, and this would enable me to create a different plan or a new mission on this terrain area without having to rebuild it. So that is it for the tutorial. Like I said, this is a creative process, and you can get as detailed as you like with any of it, and the best way to learn is to get your hands dirty and try and make something for yourself. I hope this was informative and you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next video.